This is going to be my first preview for the Ravens' Week 1 visit to Kansas City to face the Chiefs, a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. I'll be honest with you, this is probably going to be an example of me creating content where my reach exceeds my grasp from a production standpoint at the very least, and maybe from a schematic or tactical perspective as well. Here's what I mean. During the Super Bowl last year between the Chiefs and 49ers, I made up my mind that I was going to do a large-scale film study for the Chiefs offense for a lot of reasons. Number one, to challenge myself. Number two, to be prepared in the event that the Ravens got another chance to play Kansas City and Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce. Then the NFL makes that the Thursday Night Football opener when they announce the schedule for the entire league in mid-May. So it was daunting but fun. So this is going to be my breakdown of the Chiefs offense. There will be considerable film and probably 2 parts, maybe 3 overall before Thursday's game. So the film can kind of stand on its own in some ways. I'll have a significant commentary and I'll provide some data that I compiled. A lot of that data came from the new NFL Pro website that is truly an amazing piece of work. I have to give credit to the NFL for it. It's a part of NFL Plus Premier or NFL Plus Pro maybe. I think it's $15 a month. Even though it doesn't provide personnel data, you can go there and you can find all instances of Patrick Mahomes being on the field in 2023, all instances of Travis Kelce being on the field. And then you can look for, now you can't do personnel groupings, but you can get a lot of data from it. And I use other websites to get personnel groupings, information that I'll kind of give throughout the flow of this video. First thing that I want to establish that's based on something I believe from just watching film, and then I think is also, in my opinion, proven from some of the data I got from NFL Pro. The Chiefs are a right-handed football team when it matters, in multiple ways, not just one. They're going to put the running back to Patrick Mahomes' right, and more often than not, 2 or 3 receivers to his right in critical situations, 3rd and 4th down. Now, I understand, most quarterbacks are right-handed, most teams are right-handed, quote unquote, but in moments of high leverage or uncertainty, the Chiefs take it to an extreme, particularly in terms of percentage of 3rd and 4th down plays that are designed to go to their right. Either Mahomes sprint out behind the running back or a handoff with the running back, like a fake from right to left, and the route combinations, the read, if you will, being to the right. And so we'll get to some film in a minute. Now look, Mahomes offers at least 2 other elements to whatever the concept is. Because of his agility and athleticism, he's dangerous when scrambling. So whatever Reid designs or calls has that aspect to it. Mahomes could scramble and make something happen. Number 2, while he's moving to his right, he can still make throws. I don't know if I want to say to his left. He can't make throws all the way back over to the numbers all the way to the left if you're drifting to your right, but he can make them in the middle of the field. And one of the first plays that I show you here will be an example of that. So I think these calls are a pattern. Is it how to stop Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? No, I don't think so, but it's an element, I think, that we can say makes them a little bit more predictable than others would like to admit. So the first play that I'll go over to try to illustrate some of this comes straight from the Super Bowl. Now this is a 3rd and 1 in overtime, I believe. Run concept to the middle of the field is stopped. I think it's Hargrave and the backup inside linebacker for the 49ers that came on after their starter was injured that stopped him for no gain. So it's a great effort, forces the play of the game, or one of the plays of the game, I guess. It's a 4th and 1. And if you notice a couple of indicators that I'll talk to and I'll talk about and I'll reference throughout this video, it's running back to the right, multiple receivers to the right. Most cases, it's trips or 3. Now, number 1, I'm not sure what the 49ers are doing in a too high safety look here, but this is obviously a play where the running back crosses Mahomes' face and Bosa goes with him. So what they've done here is, number 1, they've gotten Mahomes on the move, given him the ability to scramble, which it ends up being, I think, an 8 or a 9-yard gain for him. Additional to that, they put someone in conflict. You got to give them credit for leaving. Andy Reid knew what Bosa would do when he was unblocked. In this case, go with the running back on a run concept away. He doesn't contact or collision Kelce at all. He's chasing the running back completely. Obviously a tactical mistake the way it worked out. Hindsight is 20/20. We get to talk about that all we want. And then Mahomes has options sitting here short routes, a little snag maybe, and then Kelce running out into the flat. So you're talking about a quadruple option really for Mahomes in terms of 3 routes there, and then the 4th route being himself. Cool concept, if you ask me, particularly in a 4th and 1. I tried to check this and make sure that it would go through and copyright so you can see the nature of it and what I'm trying to establish. The indicators are, for me, ball on the left hash, generally. This one's close. 3 receivers to the right, and the final part to it, running back to the right. That, to me, is a heavy indicator for something to the right-hand side. Now, look, this is what I'm talking about this in 3rd and 4th down situations. This is overwhelmingly going to be 3rd down play calls here where I'm trying to establish a pattern and trying to establish some type of, quote, tell that defenses can use to not necessarily stop the Chiefs. The title is a misnomer, but at least slow them down. First possession against the Ravens. Ball is close to the left hash, but it's not exactly on the left hash. It's a 4th and 2. 200 sprint or sprint right for Mahomes, and he's got a typical route combination down here. What do you notice? On the previous play that I showed you, the 4th and 1 against the 49ers, running back was crossing Mahomes' face. It was not an actual RPO read. Mahomes would keep it, run around to the edge. Here, all Andy Reid has done is replace that right-to-left motion with the running back by a guy in motion. That pulls the inside linebacker out of the middle of the field, and once this is taken away, the little out by the slot, and then a little bit higher route that perhaps needs a little bit more separation from his teammate. By pulling the inside linebacker out of here, it's opened up the middle of the field for Mahomes to come back to what I consider to be his 3rd option. It's a sprint concept behind the running back. The running back is not crossing his face, but because of the opening of the middle of the field by the motion left to right, they've given Mahomes a 3rd option. So there aren't 4 options here like the previous play that I showed against the 49ers. Look, and it's an amazing throw. I mean, as I go through this video, I will talk about some of Mahomes' efficiency being schemed up and created for him, but that throw is ridiculous. To be moving to your right, have the little short out taken away, the higher out from the number 1 receiver, basically covered by inside-outside leverage, and then a safety over the top, and then to put this on the money for Kelce to make the catch. I mean, I wasn't a fan of his antics, obviously, during the game, but that's an amazing play, and you have to give both of those guys credit. Same play, end zone angle. Again, this is a 4th and 2. I believe first possession. If it's not first possession, it's second. And the brilliance of the throw, the catch by Kelce, all cool. The design is what I'm talking about here, and how, as a defense, at times you need to understand that they are a right-handed football team when it matters. Again, you have ball on the left hash. This is a 3rd down mesh play on their 2nd possession. The running back initially on the left, and he ends up being over on the right just before the snap. It's a mesh concept. This is another establishing shot for me. Not only do they rely heavily on attacking to the right on 3rd and 4th down critical situations, additional to that, Andy Reid's offense at this point in 2024 is built on creating leverage for receivers and tight ends through pick, rub concepts. It doesn't mean that those guys can never get open on their own. We're talking about, in this case, we're talking about Rashee Rice, an extremely talented receiver. Again, the back has motioned over to the right, so you have the same indicators that I'm talking about pre-snap. Travis Kelce is really good at screening. I don't want to call it pick or rub because he doesn't make contact. Screening the leveraged defender. In this case, the leveraged defender is Brandon Stevens. Leveraged meaning he's behind Rashee Rice. He's chasing on a 3rd and 4, and Kelce is trying his best to not make contact while actually influencing the defender to go under the bottom side. Basically slow him up by, I would say, a half a step to 3/4 of a step, or maybe even a full step. It allows Rashee Rice to win in a manner that he would have not otherwise been able to win one-on-one. Could he still have completed the catch? Could Mahomes still have completed the throw? Absolutely. Another element to this, but it made it more high percentage. It made it more efficient. Another element to this is you've got 2 receivers here releasing deep, a 3rd receiver in the case of Pacheco, and then 4th receiver to the same side of the field. Basically ends up being 4 to a side, whether it's zone or man. All defenses are going to have trouble with that. You're going to be, if it's man, you're going to be clearing out space Keep in mind that the ball was caught somewhere in this area here. Pre-snap, you have multiple guys in that area, but because the Ravens are playing man defense, all those guys vacate those spots. Rashee Rice runs onto wide open space. And look, the Chiefs O-line, you got to give them credit. They're a very good offensive line, extremely good in pass protection, even if we think there's times where they hold or they get away with holds. All teams do that at times. I think these two plays against the Ravens and the one against the 49ers is a small sample size that I've shown you out of a larger group of plays I've accumulated. Probably talking about 40 to 44 plays overall I consider to be third and fourth down, critical situations where Andy Reid says, we're going to take the ball and we're going to go to our right and we're going to give Mahomes the best chance to complete a play either through overloading the zone or man with 4 to a side, a pick, a rub, or a screen concept, or getting Mahomes on the move and allowing him the option to run as a third or fourth option or element in the play. This is 4 to a side pre-snap. Wildcard game against the Dolphins is a 3rd and 10. I believe it's the third possession. So we'll just briefly 4 to a side. No pick, no rub, but conceptually, what you've got here is just overwhelming or outnumbering the defense. Now you'd say, well, coach, there's 4 defenders here and then a 5th guy who's inside leverage. Well, number one, he's staring at Mahomes. Mahomes knows that these guys are going to be cleared out, either horizontally cleared out or vertically cleared out. And again, basically the same space that we're talking about, what I like to call zone 4. I would be really interested in seeing a hit chart for Mahomes in where his throws are on 3rd and 4 or more, or even 4th down situations. I'd be willing to bet you that zone 4 or the middle of the field and then pushing to the right would be a hot spot. This is a 3rd and 11. This one's actually incomplete against the Bills in the divisional round. It doesn't mean that none of Mahomes' great plays or great throws go to his left, right? He's got a shit ton of highlights and great plays and in some cases interceptions, but they certainly run a lot of plays to the left at times, and I will show you a few here in a moment. But as I noted, I couldn't help but notice it, and I mentioned it last year in videos, a ton of their high leverage plays have these indicators: ball on the left hash, running back set to Mahomes' right, 2 or 3 receivers to the right, and that ends up being the Reid side, where the Reid is, where Mahomes is looking first. Additional to that, I would classify this as 4 to a side. So you got all these markers. Does it mean that the Ravens can easily stop them? Well, no. Andy Reid has at least 3 different things that he does in these high leverage situations that gives Mahomes, I think, high percentage throws in the big moments, and at times give him the ability to move to his right and add that last flavor to the play in terms of his athleticism, his ability to scramble and make people miss and still pick up the first down. Against the Broncos, they're going to get a Tampa 2 here defense. This is week 8, I believe. 3 receivers to the right. Running back set to the right. An unbelievable throw by Mahomes. So again, there are elements of scheme and design, getting people open as an offensive coordinator or head coach or staff. And then there's times where you just say, hey, the guy made an unbelievable throw. This appears to me to be a cover 2 shell. The hard corner here, and Mahomes is going to find the open spot and deliver it, I believe, to Watson, who's an underrated receiver. If you ask me, you have the middle vertical that's carrying the inside linebacker. I think this is Justin Simmons, maybe a step late to get over here, but it's a ridiculous throw. Even if Justin Simmons was a step or a step and a half further, there's really not much you can do. He found the hole in the zone. Again, it's on 3rd and 13. All the markers you have that I mentioned there are present in this play. 3 receivers to the right, running back to the right, and the intended receiver, or the Reid, if you will, being to the right as well. Week 17 against the Bengals doesn't mean that every single play call is to the right. This one's to the left, but what do you notice? It's a drop by MVS. You also have a mesh concept. When you have Travis Kelce on the backside, tightly aligned, watch his release. He does something very similar to what he did on the completion on a 3rd and 4 to Rashee Rice against the Ravens. He's basically looking to screen someone. In this case, 20 is running with MVS, and Kelce is brutally efficient at getting in the way, or in this case, his defender gets in the way. Mahomes had a choice of either guy to throw it to. Mesh concepts, pick, rub concepts, a large percentage of what you see in this offense. It doesn't mean that Patrick Mahomes can't make throws on his own. That would be a ridiculous statement. What it means is Andy Reid is a genius at creating higher efficiency opportunities in these moments for all types of players, X receivers, slot receivers, tight ends, running backs as well. 3rd and 5 against Buffalo. Running back to the right, 3 receivers to the right, ball on the left hash. Incomplete pass to Watson. They love these layered concepts. So it's either layered with 2 outs, like you see here, a deeper out, and then he loves this kind of sail out being the shorter one. I really need to get 2 different colored lines to be able to annotate so you guys can tell the difference. But we're talking about layered routes between these 2 guys here in the same direction. And Mahomes has the ability or the option to choose either one. In this case, the safety's on the high side route. So Mahomes is trying to get it to Watson. Maybe the throw could be out there towards the sideline a little bit more. Mahomes doesn't necessarily step into it. It's all arm. And you get, I think, a really great play by Jackson. Week 5 against the Vikings, I would say this is somewhat similar to the play they ran against the 49ers that ended up being almost a quadruple option for Mahomes, 3 routes to potentially throw it to or keep it. You even have Kelce as the guy running the bubble, reading the end man on the line of scrimmage. Since this is a 3rd and 2, Mahomes gives it. That edge defender isn't going to be able to stop Pacheco, who ends up going for a 5-yard gain. Ball on the left hash, running back to the right, 3 receivers to the right. It's not every time. Is it 60% of the time? Is it 40% of the time? I don't know, but it's a lot. It's enough such that a football moron like me, compared to NFL coaches, was able to notice it last year, mention it in some videos, and then during my off-season film study, have it confirmed for me as a reality. All right, this section of plays is going to be conceptually similar, just a mirrored image in some cases. Ball on the right hash, 3 receivers to the left, but we're going to focus on shield or pick or rub concepts that originate from the same side, so not mesh. Now, there is no hard and fast rule because Andy Reid's playbook is extremely deep and diverse. It's not always the point man that screens for someone. In this case, it technically is. Rashee Rice ends up screening or picking the defender responsible for Travis Kelce. This is a 4th and 1 under center against the Broncos in Week 8. They love this reverse pivot stuff. You see, again, you got sprint out type blocking, even though Mahomes is not on a sprint out path. And what I mean by sprint out is all the line is working to one side, and they let the back handle the edge defender to the side they're vacating. Well, why? Well, because the running back isn't going to have to handle him for very long because the ball's going to be out quick. Well, how do they know the ball's going to be out quick? Because they're scheming up an easy release for someone. What am I saying? You need to get hands on people. Maybe not every single guy. Someone needs to have their route release destroyed. If it were me and I have a point man within 4 yards of the line, within 4 yards of the left tackle, the right tackle, someone needs to get in that guy's face and get hands on him immediately and then not be responsible for man coverage. If you have to do that with an outside linebacker at some points, then so be it. I would not want to give up easy plays like this one if it were me. Travis Kelce didn't have to do anything in terms of winning here. Patrick Mahomes didn't have to read anything. This is all, look, hey, credit to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, first of all. They're able to find something and exploit it, whether it's to the right or their left. It's great coaching. It's great execution. There's no reason to decry it if you're a Ravens fan, and if you're a Chiefs fan who's listened this long, or someone who likes Mahomes, don't complain about someone pointing it out. There's a lot of typical pass concepts that they execute and do it to a high degree. I'm saying that. What I'm saying is these are the situations in high leverage, 3rd and 4th downs, important moments of the game where you've got to understand as a defense that Andy Reid has a deep reservoir of plays to go to. Okay, you can't defend everything. That's true. But when they give you certain indicators, ball on the left hash, running back to the right, 3 receivers to the right, or ball on the right hash, running back to the left, 3 receivers to your left, and it's a critical moment, you should look for either a pick, a rub, or a shield concept or something like that that gives Patrick Mahomes an easy read. More shield concepts for the next 3 or 4 plays. Down into the boundary. Yeah, it's a drop by Travis Kelce. This in Week 17 against the Bengals is a 3rd and 7. Watch MVS's release. I'll let it run multiple times. He's doing nothing here except being taught to get to the outside shoulder. Travis Kelce isn't having to do a thing to win this route other than be slow here and then go. Be slow so MVS can get there first. MVS is just adjusting to the path of the second defender in from the sideline. That's it, no matter who it is, whether it's an inside linebacker, whether it's a nickel defender, whatever. He's just adjusting to that path, getting to the outside shoulder, and look how quickly Mahomes is getting rid of the ball. This is not a sprint release, obviously. It's a more typical pass pro. It's a beautiful design. Credit to them for consistently creating these. Other people do them. Andy Reid does it more. More of Patrick Mahomes' completions in high leverage moments come on concepts like this one than any other quarterback I see in the NFL. Did it against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game as well. Ball on the right hash, running back happens to be set into the boundary, so there's no sprint out. This is not as much of an overt shield concept. This is what I would call almost a second guy through. But watch MVS and what he does with a nickel defender here, who is retreating. This is a 3rd and 9. I think it's the 4th possession for the Chiefs. And Kelce ends up making the catch for an 8-yard gain. It's a nice throw. There's not really much for Patrick Mahomes to read here in terms of the release. He pretty much knows where he's going to go with this ball. Once he sees the nickel defender retreating, it's either man, which is rare with Roquan Smith being on the tight end. This is zone. And then he knows where he can stick this throw in because the nickel defender briefly has been picked or screened by the number 2 receiver, which in this case was MVS. Back to the wild card win against Miami. It's a 3rd and 10. Of course, all 3 receivers are to the right. They love these layered either outside releases or inside release routes. In this case, it's inside. I would call it like post levels. Different people have different names. But you're talking about 2 receivers, the number 3 and number 2 receiver. Oftentimes you get this and then a follow release. It's not really second guy through because occasionally it goes different. Occasionally it's the first guy and then second. But I prefer the first. I prefer to focus on the first one that I wrote, which is the deeper post or climb is by the inside receiver, and then the number 2 is basically running onto the space that this guy just vacated a moment ago. Second man through is not what anyone refers to it as, but we would refer to it as in teaching our kids on defense. In particular moments, certain teams run these. Basically, the Chiefs don't do this a ton on 1st and 10. This is not a 1st and 10 play call, second man through or pick rub concepts. This is something that Andy Reid goes to when he needs yards and he wants to squeeze as much juice out of a concept as possible to increase the efficiency from 64% to 72 or 70% to 84, whatever number you want to categorize. It's a way to create increased efficiency and reliability in the play call such that they can retain possession of the football and go down and score points. That's Andy Reid's job, and he's really freaking good at it. 3rd and 4, Week 17 against the Bengals. 3 receivers to the left. A running back happens to be to the left as well. Chip releases on the DN. A beautiful throw from Mahomes to Watson. I think you've got a penalty here. I think that's Dax Hill, but I could be wrong. It's just basically slot fade, except it ends up being a corner route. Watson is an underrated guy, like I said, and Mahomes, I mean, when you give him time, you're going to get unbelievable throws like this 4, 5, 6 times a game. In this case, the Bengals did what they have often done to Mahomes, which is rush 3. In the 2021 AFC title game, it was very beneficial to them to rush 3. I had them doing it like 9, 10, or 11 times throughout that game. In this case, it certainly was not because Mahomes was able to sit back there and survey it and tear up the man defense, again, to the left. Against the Bills, Week 20 AFC Divisional Round, Pacheco liked to come up and fake check with Mahomes to hear something. He didn't need to hear anything. He knew exactly what the play call was. Almost an iteration of second guy through. So when I'm talking about trips for these guys, and this is a 3rd and 6, by the way, pay attention to the timing of these two routes and why this one's staggered, meaning why he's off the line and why the point man, the middle guy, is on. I would recommend getting hands on any point man, whether he is within 4 yards of the tackle, whether he is distended or pushed further out, like in this situation. But 12, I think that's Hardman, but I could be wrong. He just vacated this space here near the top of the numbers, about the 13 or the 14-yard line. And that's pretty much where Rashee Rice catches it, closer to the 10 or the 11. But what he did is he widened this defender up. Mahomes and Andy Reid, if you ask me, utilize an old school philosophy in a modern passing game, and that's this. It used to be called student body right or student body left. Overwhelm the defense with more blockers and a ball carrier than they can handle. And oftentimes when they go 4 to a side, which is not exactly what this is, there's only 3 receivers to the side, but second man through conceptually is the same thing. 2 players going into an area, but in a layered manner or staggered release, and only 1 defender in that spot, in that location, to be able to handle it. This is one of the best examples of what I'm talking about. First of all, it's unpredictable who is going to actually provide the pick or the shield. In this case, it's the outside receiver who is legitimately running a route, but he is also taught to get to the outside shoulder. It's Watson on Kyle Hamilton. This is a 3rd and 7. Again, you have sprint blocking, if you ask me, because the line is all working away from the edge defender. The offensive line is all working away from Oweh, and the running back is stepping to Oweh. You say, well, how can a running back block Oweh? Because he doesn't have to block him for long. And they know that because of how quickly Mahomes is going to get rid of the ball. So 3rd and 7, easy throw. There's nothing here that's difficult. This is just pitch and catch. They have screened Kyle Hamilton. The Ravens, just like many other NFL teams, don't switch coverage on bunch often depending on release, number 1. And number 2, they also don't jam up the point man in any regard. If you ask me, if you get Travis Kelce to the bunch and the running back on the same side, you're going to have to deal with this guy one-on-one, and this player here needs to be on the opposite side. Now, I know what you're going to say is, well, they just drafted Xavier Worthy. I think at some point you're going to have to make a tactical decision. We either want to be dink and dunk to death by the Andy Reid scheme, which is going to take advantage of the modern rules such that the offense is allowed to do that, but the defense is not. Or you're going to make Patrick Mahomes beat you with some one-on-ones to the backside in some of these 3rd and 7s. He may complete some, and he certainly did on the last play of the game, last offensive snap of the game for the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. MVS beat Arthur Millette deep to close out the game on a 3rd down, get them a new series of downs so they could take a knee and move on to the Super Bowl. These are all going to be examples of what I'm talking about when I say 4 to a side. It's not necessarily a pre-snap, but meaning alignment. It's post-snap, and sometimes the running back can cross the quarterback's face, but more often than not, you're getting trips and then the running back to the trip side, either by alignment or in this case, you're creating a quad set. Touchdown pass against the Bengals, Week 17. You can see this is almost similar conceptually to the second man through concept that I've discussed with you, meaning that Kelce is releasing here, Rice is going under, and you've got a 3rd receiver releasing to the outside, and the zig cut off of it by Pacheco, basically running onto the space that Kelce and Rice have kind of vacated. Easy touchdown throw for Mahomes. Look, Mahomes' job, Mahomes and Reid make the jobs easier for the wide receivers. Reid and the offensive coordinators do that well. It's not meant to take away from what they do. There's game-changing plays. I'll show you one here at the end of this little segment that's, ridiculous scramble by Mahomes. But Reid and his offensive staff do a great job of creating high percentage chances. And in some cases, that involves overwhelming the defense that is deployed, a zone defense. A zone defense, you just don't have enough guys to match up and leverage when there's 4 to a side. This happens to be an instance where it's only a 2-yard loss, There's nobody open. I think the Bengals have done a nice job of initially playing what we used to call fifths. 27 is a little bit further towards the middle of the field for me to make that statement, but defense is generally balanced. There's 3 guys in coverage to either side, and then 1 in the middle of the field, whether that's a free safety or an inside linebacker. The 4 to a side really just overwhelms a zone or an area numerically. That's all it does. Like I said, a modern-day student body right that gets 4 blockers out in front with a ball carrier against only 3 defenders. You can't stop it. You're outnumbered 5-3. In this case, the numbers are in the offense's favor, and as well as the rule set. Andy Reid has a larger percentage of plays that, in my opinion, rely on pick rub concepts or shield or 4 to a side than most other NFL offensive coordinators do. That's not a criticism. It's not a weakness of his offense. I think it's brilliant. I think it's removal of ego. And what I mean is, we, the Chiefs, are going to get this done with the highest % chance of success. Me, us, coaches, Andy Reid. If we have to help create leverage for our guys, so be it. If we have to flood your zone with more receivers than you can conceptually cover, then that is what we will do. I think there's something to be said for it. Maybe an admission that we need to do that. Maybe we don't have supremely talented wide receivers. They just drafted Xavier Worthy, so he's got tremendous ability and potential. So their front office has added a dynamic receiver, and they also signed Marquise Brown a year after selecting Rashee Rice, who went on to put up, I think, 79 catches on a 77% catch percentage. Incredibly efficient. I think that speaks to what we're talking about here. Now, this is not an example of schemed up brilliance. This is just Mahomes looking for something that could be open. I do think you have a late 4 developing to a side. 1, 2, 3, and then MVS being the 4th. Nothing shows for Mahomes, and then he scrambles. It's a 2nd and 8, kind of breaks Denver's back. He ends up scrambling for 8 yards. Gives you an illustration, and you didn't really need one at this point, especially if you watch this long. You're a football junkie like me, that Mahomes can get things done on his own. The added element of schemed up plays that Andy Reid and his offensive staff create just pushes them over the top and makes it damn near impossible to defend them in some of these high leverage situations. All right, so these were mostly all 3rd down plays, in some cases 4th down. And look, it's actually more difficult the last 2 years, I think, to defend the Chiefs. Why? Because the infusion that Pacheco has provided, in my opinion, makes them more difficult to defend at times. And some of the tactical shifts that have been made by Andy Reid since his arrival. So I'm going to diverge here for a moment and talk about some data and actually show you some. I think the overall run-pass numbers are not going to reflect something that I have believed for a while. I've had the opinion for a couple of years that in big games since Pacheco's arrival, since he was drafted in the 7th round, Andy Reid has been more willing to utilize a conservative play calling script. In essence, rely on the run game more, safer, high percentage, high leverage pass plays, as opposed to what their offense was called from like 2018 to 2021. I think it was the Legion of Zoom. I think that changed or morphed a lot in 2022 for a couple of reasons. Number one will be Pacheco. Number 2, their overall usage of 12 and 13 personnel has been notable. In 2023, last year, Kansas City's offense was 5th in the league in 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends, 7.4%. They were also 4th in 12 personnel usage, so 1 running back, 2 tight ends. So if you combine those two, you're talking about 35% of Kansas City's plays involve the use of 2 or more tight ends. Now, Travis Kelce kind of morphs all that or alters it a little bit because he can be a tight end one snap and a slot receiver on the next. So this is truly an example of how 12 personnel can sometimes be equal to 11, meaning it can be a 12 personnel grouping, but an 11 personnel formation. Kelce can be a slot receiver. He can be an X receiver, inline tight end, off tight end who motions one side or the other. Go back a year, 2022. The Chiefs used 12 or 13 personnel even more. If you combine the two in 2022, 39% of their offensive snaps. But my assertion was that they ran the ball more in 2023, and that was slightly incorrect. I will read and show you the data. I think I was both right and wrong at the same time. So 2023, you're talking about 635 passes by Mahomes, 417 rushes. Works out to 40% run, 60% pass. So I was slightly right in my educated guess late in the season last year that they ran more, but they only ran 1% more. You're really not talking about a huge difference. Go back a year, 2022, 651 passes, the same exact number of rushes, 417. Feel free to double check me on that. I triple checked it to make sure. I was like, wait a minute, they had the same exact number of rushing attempts 2 years in a row. But in any case, 2022, Pacheco's first year ended up being 39% run and 61% pass. This is regular season numbers, by the way. 2021, I guess what will be considered the last year of the Legion of Zoom, as they called it, apparently. 38.9% run, 61.1% pass. A remarkable consistency, really. Roughly talking about 40% run, 60% pass from a complete perspective. Now, if you go look at 12 personnel and 13 personnel, it's a little bit different. But one of the situations I want to talk about is their Super Bowl win over the Eagles. I think it's an example of the way that Reid can shift or change the offense within a week's time. The Chiefs, if you recall, in that Super Bowl, they ran for 159 yards against the Eagles defense. Really slippery field, obviously. 6 yards per carry, and they also didn't turn the football over. And yes, that game plan also had to account for Mahomes' injury going in. Mahomes, only threw for 182 yards, but he wasn't sacked one time. He didn't throw an interception. He was 21 of 27 throwing. And like I said, they also didn't turn the football over. I think that's related to two things: the play calling style, what Reid's trying to accomplish, and a vastly improved defense. And that's going to be where I'm going to spin this video a little bit. The way they drafted defense: 2020, L'Jarius Sneed and Willie Gay. 2021, Nick Bolton. Really could have been the Super Bowl MVP against the Eagles if that second touchdown, fumble recovery for a touchdown isn't, ruled to be, I think, incomplete. And then the ridiculous 2022 draft: Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Leo Chenal, 2 other DBs, I think Williams, and I forget the other guy's name, maybe it's Brown, but I could be wrong, that play and have played often. The Chiefs' defense got better immediately in 2022 when those guys were added, and that helped them get over the hump, the Bengals hump, I should say, in the AFC Championship game. I think it also influenced or changed the way Andy Reid calls plays on offense, because he realized he didn't have to rely on Mahomes for 74% or 72% of the win-determining factors. He could rely on him for 60%, or in some cases 50-50. After watching the Chiefs make it through the AFC last year and then win another Super Bowl that perhaps we didn't think they'd be able to accomplish, I've come to the conclusion that the Chiefs' defense is, in some ways, the superior side. It's the more consistent side of the ball for them, such that their offense can be a little bit more traditional at times. Safe, conservative passing game, if you will, allowing Mahomes to make a smaller number of unbelievable throws or plays over the course of the game. Rely on a smart, young, athletic, and very fast and physical defense with a brilliant defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo. Yes, Mahomes won his individual 3rd Super Bowl in 2023. He beat the Ravens on the road, the best team in the league. So the output, the final result, is the same for the Chiefs 3 of the past 4 years, but not the method. Mahomes threw for 300 yards 4 times in the 2023 regular season. He also finished with the least amount of passing yards he's had since 2019. In fact, his second lowest ever for a full season that he played in. And that even is a little bit misleading, because the lowest number of passing yards he's ever played in as a starter was 2019, and he only played 14 games that year. Now, it's not to say that he played poorly. He did not. Clearly, they won a pair of road playoff games against quarterbacks with better stats in the regular season in Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. But the point is, the defense is exceptional. They were 2nd in the league last year in points allowed. I think beyond just Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis has to be mentioned at this point as being one of the premier players. You have a handful you have 10 or 12, I should say, guys who are very capable of playing a high level football at their position, but oftentimes have some positional overlap, meaning they have a lot of good DBs, and those guys have to compete for time. Now, on the topic of Mahomes, I understand if there's Chiefs fans that watching, they may not like some of the commentary that I made, but I'm just reading out facts from a completion percentage standpoint, from a touchdown to interception ratio standpoint. Mahomes did not have a great 2023 regular season. People will say, well, he won another Super Bowl. Fine. He did, however, inside of that, have his best completion percentage ever. 67.2%. That was tied with Lamar Jackson. Actually, I think slightly behind Lamar, like 1,000% behind. But they were both like essentially tied for 8th in the NFL. At the same time that he had his highest completion percentage ever, 67.2%, he had his lowest yards per attempt, 7 yards per attempt. His lowest yards per completion, 10.4 yards per completion in his entire career. Paradoxically, he did throw 14 interceptions. Maybe it was 13. Forgive me for that. So that part, the 14 interceptions, doesn't fit my narrative, or my assertion, I should say, that what you're seeing is a more conservative approach that relies on efficiency more so than Mahomes' persistent individual brilliance over the course of 4 quarters. Also, the reliance on 12 and 13 personnel groups, I think, clearly has an impact on the depth of target or the yards per attempt. So naturally, the more tight ends you have on the field potentially catching routes, they're going to be shorter yards and shorter depth of target, than a traditional wide receiver, number one. And number two, probably also less yards after the catch. Look, the amazing throws are still there. Some of them we've already showed in this video, but the basketball analogy that I want to make here, and because that seems to work for quarterbacks in a lot of ways, it reminds me of Steph Curry. The Warriors, I believe, had already won 2 NBA championships, but had lost to LeBron in 2016. They promptly go out and get Kevin Durant. Curry didn't have to be the ball-dominant superstar to go out and get 35, 38 in every big game. On every possession that was important, he didn't have to be the guy to go create his own shot. They use a lot of pick and roll, by the way, so that's where my comparison, I actually think, has more weight. Is there a reliance on the pick and roll? Now, you may say, Coach, the Chiefs gave away their KD, Tyreek Hill. I would counter that Steve Spagnuolo's revamped defense, beginning in 2022, is the Chiefs' Kevin Durant. McDuffie, Karlaftis, L'Jarius Sneed, who's now gone, Willie Gay, who's now gone, Chris Jones, who was drafted in 2016, and a 10 or 12 other tough, fast defenders who maybe don't get recognition but fit into this scheme perfectly. And the play style of Mahomes and Reid has become more balanced, efficient, and I think involve fewer risky plays. I don't know how to account for the 14 interceptions from 2023, so therein lies the rub for me in my assertion, so you can accept it if you want, but I know this. They rely on pick, rub, and shield concepts, and 4 to a side, far more than most other NFL offenses, to simply out-scheme defenses in some of the more important moments in a game. Now, what could change this dynamic and some of those statistics that I just read out in terms of yards per attempt, yards per completion, maybe depth of target, I didn't really get into that, is the integration of Xavier Worthy to a degree that it pushes Mahomes' yards per attempt and yards per completion higher, back out to more familiar territory in terms of the stats. Go look it up yourself. In terms of the yards per attempt, yards per target, is quite low. I think in some ways Worthy could almost add the element that Pacheco brought to the run game, to the versatility that he has. Even though Pacheco is obviously a pretty good blocker as well, out of the backfield. I think the ability to not just stretch the field vertically for Worthy is important for the Chiefs, but also horizontally. Some of the horizontal concepts, this one doesn't necessarily work out. It's a great play by Amik Robertson, but the next one does. It's a touchdown to Xavier Worthy, his first touchdown, albeit preseason. I think he adds an element that is smart for the Chiefs front office to going out and go get, because they recognize that they have the defense in place to play a more conservative style at times. But at this point in time, adding a weapon for them with speed and the ability to score on any particular touch was a brilliant move by their front office and probably helps Patrick Mahomes maintain that really high efficiency, 67, 68% completion percentage, but also push his touchdowns in 2024 back up into the 30s or maybe even the 40s. The final film study piece to this, consider it just actually a warning. If we don't at least impede Travis Kelce in some manner, we will not be able to defend him with any level of efficiency or consistency. The amount of free releases that he got in the AFC Championship game was maddening for me. I complained about it in my reaction video and multiple times in the offseason. I will just say, having watched a ton of Chiefs offense over the course of the offseason, it is not a way to, quote, stop Travis Kelce, but it is a way to slow him down and by proxy, slow down Patrick Mahomes on some of these plays where the design of it is to just get the ball out to Kelce quick. Think of Kelce at times like a jab. He can certainly be the straight right or the left hook to knock you out, don't get me wrong. But there are many more concepts where Kelce's lined up tight to the tackle, in this case to the left tackle. And through lack of discipline or lack of physicality, the Ravens were one of the worst teams last year in this game at touching him and impeding his route releases at all, number one. And number two, understanding that you needed to stay with him like Kyle Hamilton just released him there. It was one of the most porous games, in my opinion, dealing with a tight end that I have seen the Ravens have in a long time. Perhaps you're a lifelong Ravens fan, and you have a better memory or a better idea of some of those situations, but no one touched Travis Kelce on any of his 11 catches other than Kyle Hamilton on the previous play that I just showed you. And unfortunately, he released him and let him go out into the flats and catch the ball for an easy first down. If you don't make things more difficult for Travis Kelce off the line, he will eat you up. Generally to the boundary, generally on concepts that are out releases. Occasionally, he does run inside releasing routes, but I do not see him as a guy that wins consistently in that way. Although earlier in this video, which ended up being incredibly long, I showed you the film of him beating Brandon Stevens from the left side on a 4th and 2 over the middle. A great throw by Mahomes, a great catch by Kelce, and great design and scheme by Andy Reid. This is my film study look at the Chiefs offense. This is part one. I guess actually I will go into their run game and their 12/13 personnel offense, which is an offense in and of itself. I would like to be able to complete that video in such a way that you as a fan, when you watch the game on Thursday night and you see the Chiefs come out with 12 or 13 personnel, meaning one running back, 2 tight ends, or one running back, 3 tight ends, that you have an idea of what they're going to run based on the formation they line up in. That's the level to which I'm shooting for or aiming for. And again, it may be a situation where my reach and my desire to present the content exceeds my grasp. I'm okay if you let me know in the comment section that I did not attain my goal here of trying to educate you on at least 3 of the elements of the Chiefs offense and some projection or some theories that I have on why they do certain things, why I believe their play calling is slightly more conservative than it has been in previous years, even though perhaps the data, the overall run pass data, didn't bear that out. In any case, man, I appreciate you guys' time, particularly on a Saturday morning as college football season begins. Let me know what other elements you would like for me to cover. I think I'll have at least 2 more preview videos out. This one took a long time. I originally wanted to have it done on Thursday. It grew into a monster project, and so here we are. I had a heck of a time, a heck of a fun last 48 hours recording it and editing it and then recording it again to try to present it to you guys in a particular order. Let me know how close you think I came to achieving my goal of presenting you an overview of the Chiefs offense with specific touch points or hit points on what Andy Reid likes to do in high leverage situations to give Patrick Mahomes the biggest chance, the highest percentage to be successful. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Ravens fans or Chiefs fans, in fact, would appreciate this preview of what Kansas City Chiefs offense actually is, at least from 2023, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.